Cities and towns near the path of totality are bracing for an influx of visitors. The demand for hotel rooms and rentals is sending prices skyrocketing. Rooms that normally cost $100 in places like Burlington, Vermont, are going for as much as $1,400. ABC's Brad Mielke, host of the Start Here podcast, joins me now for more on that. Brad, how big of a deal is this? What kind of a mass migration are we talking about?
Well, so in terms of numbers, about 3 million people live in the path of totality. And that path it's only about 115 miles wide, as you just saw on the map. It goes from Texas all the way up to Vermont. 3 million people live there. That population, though, next Monday is expected to double, more than double. About 4 million people are expected to travel there. You're going to have people traveling all across the country. And we spoke to some people even who live in places like Boston, who you'd think, oh, they'll go across the state line to Vermont. They said, I'm such an eclipse head that I don't want to risk the weather of the Northeast. I'm going to go down to Texas, where I think the skies will be bluer. People get really into this, and that is why you are seeing demand in some of these towns just absolutely skyrocket.
All right, and who's driving the demand? Are these all eclipse heads, as you say, or astronomy enthusiasts, or are these just regular people who want the experience?
You think it'd be like astrophysics majors in college and everything? That is not what this is. And I actually traveled to the eclipse 7 years ago that we had, and I was one of these people that was like kind of skeptical. I don't quite know what I'm doing here. Within a few minutes, everything changed. And so now I understand why you have these people, they call themselves umbraphiles. They will travel umbraphiles. They love seeing this effect. And so that's why you got people who are coming not just from across the country, but from around the world. There are people who spend their vacations going to different sites on Earth where there are going to be eclipses. This is considered to be even better, more long-lasting, and more sort of phenomenal seeming in the sky than 7 years ago. So this one is being looked forward to a huge amount.
I don't know if you can answer this, but is this rush only happening in places that are going to see sort of right, 100% or close to it, or is somewhere like New York, where we're expected to see 85%, right, are we going to see a rush here too?
So it's tempting to think that the difference between 85% eclipse and 100% eclipse is like a 15% difference. It's not. It is the difference between a sort of dark shadow and nighttime. Okay. That is the difference. So the path of totality is definitely the place to be, and that's where you're seeing these big rushes of places. You're also seeing...
I'm not going to have to throw elbows if I want to go to the pier to see the eclipse?
I don't think so. No, because the difference is kind of an event that you either have to watch with those glasses that David was showing us, or you can watch on the ground to see kind of like really interesting shadows. That's what you can witness with a partial eclipse. To look up in the sky and see this path of totality, I mean, it becomes nighttime in more ways than one. Birds that are usually nocturnal start flying around. Crickets start chirping. The entire world sort of goes upside down for these 4.5 minutes, the closer you are to that totality line. And so that's why, you know, astrophysicists are kind of like, no, that the place you want to be is in that path of totality, and that's where these umbraphiles are flocking.
Got it. So what kind of accommodations are left for anyone who's thinking to, maybe you just convince someone, so what if they want to make a last-minute trip now?
Well, so you're going to see plane flights. Yeah, you're going to see plane flights, you know, absolutely huge numbers for some of these hubs, especially these cities. You have large cities that are right in the path. Buffalo, New York, Cleveland, Ohio, they are right on that line, meaning you're going to see some of the best eclipses that the world has to offer right there. And so you're seeing some of these, like you said, hotel accommodations absolutely skyrocket. So I went online, I wanted an Airbnb. I looked it up for you. There's some places like Evansville, Indiana. A girl will rent you part of her basement for $600 a night.
Oh, how generous.
There are people renting, not even inside their house. They just start renting their yards to campers, saying you can, you know, use our yard for $30 a night for your tent.
So what is this doing for the local economies in these places?
Well, that's what I find interesting about this, because normally when we have huge events in this country, they're all centered around big cities. They're all centered around the place that's next to the interstate, that's next to the big hotel chain. The sun doesn't care about any of that, right? So watching it in Evansville, Indiana is as good as watching it in Cleveland, is as good as watching it in a farm field somewhere in Missouri, where, again, this path goes through. And so that's why you're seeing towns that often do not experience big rushes for anything, seeing absolutely huge numbers. And to sort of capitalize on that, this is their moment, right? You got, like, we talked to a local ice cream maker that's bringing hundreds of extra gallons that usually they would not need to do this, but it is, in both good ways and, you know, challenging, tough ways, it's a moment where you're going to have a lot more people than you're expecting.
All right, so you've done this before, traveled to the path of totality. One, is it worth it? And two, any tips for those doing it?
I would have told you no until I saw it, and now I'm like, yeah, man, send me out. I host a podcast, so I'm not going to be there because it's the worst audio story in the world.
It's hard to capture that.
So I'm going to be here watching the partial eclipse with you. But it's absolutely worth it. The one piece of advice I have is if you're watching it in person, especially in a big gathering, be prepared to chill out later. Imagine 8 million people all doubling the population of these towns and everything across the strip. Imagine them all trying to leave the place at once.
Yeah.
You have some long traffic jams around these interstates, so bring your patience.
That is a great tip. Brad Mielke, thank you. And to hear Brad dive into more stories like this, check out the Start Here podcast. New episodes drop weekday mornings at 6 Eastern, wherever you get your podcasts. And you can catch the eclipse on Monday, April 8th, with coverage beginning on GMA. And then you can follow it live on Eclipse Across America. Special coverage begins at 1 p.m. Eastern. The main event starts at 2 p.m., anchored by David Muir and Linsey Davis, right here on ABC News Live.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.